First, it was $1.6 million for providing strategic advice as an historian to Freddie Mac. Today, it's $37 million that Newt Gingrich's Centre for Health Transformation think tank reportedly received from the healthcare industry. That's right. According to a report in the Washington Post, yet another one of the so-called small businesses founded by the former speaker raked in as much as $200,000 a year from insurance companies and other healthcare firms just in dues. And Politico today is reporting Gingrich himself took home $30,000 every month while consulting for Freddie Mac. But last night on Fox News, where Gingrich was also a highly paid contributor, he continued his campaign of denial.
My interest in housing and my interest in helping relatively poor Americans have a chance to buy a house is very real and goes back a long way. I was approached to offer strategic advice. I do no lobbying of any kind. I never have. I think a very important point I want to make. I have never done lobbying of any kind.
That's right, Mr. Gingrich, you did it for the poor. The $30,000 a month, well, that had nothing to do with it. Funny, Newt always comes across so saintly inside the friendly confines of Fox News. Of this network, well, here you go, Newt.
I understand that there are places like MSNBC that are essentially the Obama re-election team.
Well, Mr. Speaker, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? There's a chair here. Come on, please. I would love to have a discussion with you on Freddie or Fannie, on Winston Churchill, on the history of the 16th century church. Anything you like. The seat is yours for the taking. But in the meantime, we've two of the finest minds we could muster. Karen Finney, MSNBC political analyst and former communications director for the DNC, and Chris Hayes, host of Up with Chris Hayes here on MSNBC. Good afternoon to both of you. Chris, I am a simple soldier.
No, you are not.
I am. If two officials at Freddie Mac say Mr. Gingrich was paid to develop relationships with Republicans on the Hill, I understand that to mean lobbying. Help me. Is my lexicon false? Do I not understand the word?
There is a technical legal definition of lobbying, and in order to do that, you have to register as a lobbyist, and that means meeting formally with staff members or representatives to lobby them on a piece of legislation, and there's all sorts of disclosure and things like that. Then there is the informal black market of lobbying, which is essentially the cultivation of relationships, and is a far broader category, but the aims of it are fundamentally the same. The reason that you're making $30,000 isn't because of your brilliant strategic vision. The reason is because you have connections to lawmakers and people in power who can help you out. So the best way to think about it is Newt's activities are to lobbying as Bill Clinton's activities with Monica Lewinsky are to intercourse.
What?
Wait, no.
Karen, he's right.
Yeah. Well, actually, down here, Chris, we call that influence peddling,
right.
Actually. That's the polite, colloquialism for what Newt was doing. But you know what? Let me just remind you a little story about Newt Gingrich that should tell you everything you need to know about him. When Bill Clinton's mother died, Virginia Kelly, and everybody knows that Bill Clinton was very close to his mother, it was tragic. The day of her funeral, Newt Gingrich was on television attacking the guy. He'd been attacking, even between the period between her death and her funeral. And everybody thought, well, maybe on the day of the funeral, they'll give the poor guy a break. But nope. Now, Bob Dole later apologized. Newt Gingrich never has. This is the same evil, vindictive guy that we saw then, who, by the way, was willing to take away Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security for those poor people he's now talking about. I don't know where, maybe somewhere in there he had a conversion. So, I mean, he's the same guy.
Well, she describes him, Karen does, as evil and vindictive. But let me go back to the businesses. He describes himself as a small businessman, as you know, but he's got companies: Gingrich Communications, Gingrich Productions, Gingrich Holdings, and the Gingrich Group. So what's the product that he's selling if it's not Newt Gingrich?
Well, as Jay-Z once said, he is not a businessman, he is a businessman. In other words, Newt Gingrich is Newt Gingrich Enterprises. And remember, when his staffers, a bunch of his staffers quit way back in spring when his campaign looked like it was going nowhere, part of the reason they gave was, we can't get him to focus on the campaign because he's so busy peddling stuff. He's so busy.
Or going on a cruise of the Greek Isles.
Cruise of the Greek
Isles. Or going
Isles.
to Tiffany's.
Or were going to Tiffany's, but the major complaint was they felt like what he was really doing was trying to sell books and trying to sort of market Gingrich Enterprises and not actually run for president, and he wasn't taking it seriously. And this just highlights the fact that this economy of influence that Newt Gingrich is deeply embedded in. I mean, it's not just Newt Gingrich, right? I mean, from both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans,
Sure.
they get off Capitol Hill, and there are a whole bunch of different ways to make a whole lot of money using your influence. Newt Gingrich is one of the best at it.
Karen, I want, if I can, to turn you to Herman Cain for a moment and show you what happened when he was asked about the possibility of being inaugurated as president. Listen to this.
I almost can't say it. Holding the Bible when I'm sworn in.
That's great. Emotional, huh?
If I ever reached a point where this campaign became damaging to my family, my wife and my family, I'm not a quitter, but there is a point beyond which you will not go.
Karen, Herman Cain reduced to tears at the very thought of becoming president. Your reaction?
You know, he's such a good actor, isn't he?
I was going to say, wouldn't that reduce all of us to tears?
It was a much better performance there than the, what was that, Libya question? Such a better performance.
You've been rehearsing that, Karen. You've been rehearsing that.
You have to get the.
I mean, seriously, Martin. I mean, here's the thing that's so funny. I mean, what's funny about that is, so the guy is in this awestruck when he talks about the prospect of being inaugurated as president, but he doesn't think that as part of that job, learning or knowing how to read or actually knowing where the heck Libya is or what our relationship with some of these countries is as important. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Chris, what do you think about Republican voters in relation to this man's performance? Because they are the crucial electorate for these primaries, and he's still doing well in the polls. He slipped a bit, but he's doing pretty well still.
I think the air is a little bit out of the Herman Cain bubble. I think it's now being inflated into the Newt Gingrich bubble. I think that there's been a sequence of, there's been this sort of carousel of candidates who sort of swing around and make their pitch to be the anti-Mitt Romney. That's the fundamental dynamic of the race, is that there's Mitt Romney and then there's an anti-Mitt Romney, and it's going to come down to those two. And I think ultimately Romney is going to be the nominee. And every candidate who sort of swirls around looks good because the initial thing that gives them the bump is their capacity to give the base red meat, to tell them what they want to hear. And it turns out that there's a lot of people who are quite good at doing that. It's just that you have to sustain something beyond that at the second look, and no one has been able to meet that test yet.
Chris Hayes agrees with Ann Coulter on Mitt Romney. Chris Hayes and Karen Finney, thank you very much.